Let me ask you about this Michigan stuff yesterday. Nothing really new to me came out of this. Okay, they confirmed that it was Connor Stallions on the sideline, and Sharon Moore deleted a bunch of text messages, and it seems like it wasn't necessarily what was in those text messages that annoyed the NCAA. It was just the fact that he deleted the text messages.
Yeah, cover-up's worse than the crime, right? I mean, it's like that basically in every walk of life. If you commit a cover-up or you try to hide something, then it looks like you're guilty of more. And that's all there is to it. I think that the thought process of Sharon Moore is what should really be concerning, is that you have a guy who, you know, you're under investigation and you delete text messages the day of. That's it's not WhatsApp, right? Like, you're not talking about encrypted cables going from the CIA to the DEI. I mean, you know, it's like one of those things where, okay, you should know better. And I think beyond that, not much is going to come of this. I do love the fact that they confirmed that it was Connor Stallions on the Central Michigan sideline. That just, to me, is just phenomenal content. But I mean, more than anything else, the documentary's coming out. That's why there's a draft leaked to ESPN, because Michigan wants to get out ahead of all this stuff and not let people be surprised when they watch that documentary on Netflix. So I think that's all there is to it. They're not going to take away Michigan's national title. Sharon Moore might be suspended, but, you know, I think they'll be able to handle it. So I'm not saying it's much ado about nothing, because I think it brought us all back to that glorious time in November when we were all on Connor Stallions watch. But, you know, I think the most important things are that Sharon Moore showed a lack of judgment in terms of deleting text. People are going to find out about that. It makes you look guilty. And the fact that Connor Stallions was on the Central Michigan sideline is just tremendous content. And I'm fascinated to know where it goes from here, because now Central Michigan has a lot to answer to, and they haven't answered to it yet.
Well, this is such a thorough investigation, right? And they had to leak the draft. How the heck don't they know? Like, you've gotten credentials. I've gotten credentials. We've gotten credentials in the press box. You need a different pass to get on the sideline.
Yes, you do.
Like, they don't know, though, how he got on the sideline. To me, that's one thing I'm not buying from this.
Yeah, right. Like, if you have a sideline pass, you're important and you've been vetted and you've been checked. We're not important, Zach. You know, we can sit in the press box. We can maybe get on the field for the final 5 minutes, depending on what the rules are for the media at any given stadium. To have a sideline pass during a game, you're going to have to get that from people who matter at Central Michigan. I don't know what their reasoning is, but I'd love to hear it.
Barrett Sallee here with us. So you said something that I'm happy to hear, but I would never put it past the NCAA. You don't think Michigan's national championship is going to be vacated? Why is that, especially with you knowing how petty the NCAA likes to get?
They're not going to vacate national championships anymore. They're just not. I think vacating games is different than vacating a national championship. I think in this era, you know, people still saw Louisville win a national championship. People still saw USC win a national championship. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about vacated wins. Nobody cares about vacated national championships. I think for Michigan, and really the NCAA has done this for a long time, they want to punish the individual, not the school. Mm-hmm. And I think that in this case, obviously the school did get punished because they didn't have their coach for the final 3 games. The first 3 games were a separate deal, but they've already punished the main individual. And if they're going after Sharon Moore now, you're going to have airtight evidence that he was directly involved with this. There's not airtight evidence that Jim Harbaugh was directly involved in this, even though we all know that he was. So you're going to continue to do it with the new guy? To me, I think, yeah, they're going to do it, but they're not going to come down as hard as they did on Jim. And for Michigan, the program, I think when they got punished before with the other investigation into COVID practices, they came down hard enough on the school then where they don't have to, and they can justify not punishing them again and doubling up and basically tearing the entire Michigan program down with recruiting problems and recruiting violations like we saw with USC. That's just not going to happen.
Talking to Barrett Sallee, so I saw the coaches poll came out today. Just inside the Big Ten, you had Ohio State second, you had Oregon third, Michigan was eighth, and then Penn State was ninth. Do you think that order inside the Big Ten is right? Ohio State 1, Oregon 2, and then Michigan 3 and Penn State 4 just for Big Ten teams?
Yes, I think right now that's where it should be. And I think at the end of the season, that's where it will be. I think those 4 teams are significantly ahead of whoever you want to put below them, whether it be USC or Iowa, both of which are in the top 25 in the back end, or anybody else. I think the gap between the top 6 or so, and then down to Michigan and Penn State is pretty significant now because of Michigan's roster attrition. I think in the end, could Michigan join that top group? Yeah. But we're talking about a poll. We're not talking about a predicted order of finish, because those are 2 different conversations. So to have Michigan and Penn State kind of grouped together, totally get it. Definitely Ohio State ahead of Oregon, because I'm not the biggest Dylan Gabriel guy yet. I think that he's can win you a ton of games, but they don't have nearly as many weapons as Ohio State has. Now, I'm not the biggest Will Howard guy either, so that kind of, I wouldn't say cancels it out, but no matter who the quarterback is, if you got 2 stud running backs and you got Emeka Egbuka, I mean, you're going to do just fine no matter who you are. But I think for Dylan Gabriel, stay healthy. Can he be a difference maker? I don't know if I see it yet. So, yeah, Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, and Penn State in that order in the top 25. That's exactly how I would have it. In fact, if you look behind me, if you're watching, but you can probably hear it, I did our helmet schedules today for the Big Ten, and that's exactly what my top 4 were.
Is Carson Beck to you the best quarterback in the country entering this season, Barrett Sallee?
Right now, I would say it's Quinn Ewers. But if you ask me at the end of the segment, then I'd probably say Carson Beck. I've gone back and forth on this multiple times. I love Carson. I think that he is way better than people realize. The velocity he has, the deep ball that he throws, the touch he has coming off of that fastball is just remarkable. But Quinn Ewers is just a little bit more dynamic, and more experienced to an extent. But I think he's proven over the last couple of seasons that he has that moxie. Carson only did it for 1 year. And I know we're basically comparing $50 steaks or ice cream flavors, right? You're not going to be wrong with whatever you choose. But to me, Quinn has done it longer and done it better because he made the playoff last year. So I'll take Quinn for now. But when we hang up the Skype, when we hit the end, I might have changed my mind.
So you think they're interchangeable 1 and 2? Then who's the next best quarterback in the country?
I've gone so all over the place with this because I think the easy thing would be to say Dylan Gabriel. And it still might be the right thing to say. I just think there's a massive step back, to Dylan Gabriel. I would say that you could make an argument that it should be Jackson Dart at Ole Miss. If I had to choose right now, I would say, yeah, it's Jackson Dart. I think that right now with what he's been able to do, he's been the focus of a running game. I think people will forget last year, Quinshon Judkins wasn't very good beginning of the season, especially. Jackson Dart shouldered that load. He made Trey Walker a superstar at wide receiver, or not made, but he brought him along quickly, and he's got the arm strength. He can, put touch on the ball on out routes, on over the middle. He can use his changeup. He's got all that stuff. He's got the entire arsenal. So I would say probably Jackson Dart at Ole Miss. And there are going to be quite a few that jump up into that mix after the season starts, because there are difference makers out there, whether it be Garrett Nussmeier or Connor Wegman at Texas A&M. There are some dudes waiting in the wings to become stars.
Where's your confidence that Georgia, I know they didn't make the playoff last year, down to 12 team, we know they're going to make the playoff, but that they win it all again? Because I heard what you said with comparing Beck to Ewers. What's the separation for you, Georgia to Texas, inside the SEC now?
It's a lot closer than it is from Texas to whoever you want to put at number 3. I think with Texas, the biggest issue is at wide receiver. Do you have somebody that can be a pure number 1 I think a lot of people are saying Isaiah Bond. I would be a little bit hesitant to say he can be a true number one, and they don't have any returning starter experience outside of Isaiah Bond. So because of that, I would probably give Georgia a little bit of an edge, but a lot can be fixed with a stud offensive line. Texas is better than Georgia's. Georgia's is good. Georgia's is great. Texas is awesome. So that's a big reason why I think it's those two and then a pretty significant step back.
You know, regardless if it was a 4 or 12 team format this year, right? Georgia walks in with national championship expectations. Same with Texas. Same with Ohio State as well. So factoring in expanding from 4, who's the coach, in your opinion, this year to just make the playoffs that has the most pressure on them? Because going to 12, I think it's fascinating. You miss it a 14 playoff, all right, you get crushed, but you're not going to lose your job. You now miss it a 12-team format. There could be some coaches that could be sent packing at the end of the year.
Well, I would say Ryan Day, but his situation's so unique. The biggest one is James Franklin's time to shine at Penn State, and if he doesn't, oh, buddy, like this whole thing is made for Penn State to sneak in almost every single season.
Yep,
and James has had plenty of chances. Plenty of chances where he's on that 7, 8, 9, 10 final ranking. That should be good enough to get in. And he's hitched his wagon to Drew Aller. He's got a great running back duo, which you have to have in this day and age. And so I think if Penn State doesn't make it, there are going to be calls for James Franklin because they're sick of this. They're sick of being on the outside looking in. And if they can't break through that glass ceiling when 8 new teams can,
indefensible,
then something's wrong. It shouldn't happen. It would be an indictment of him as a coach, not Penn State and Penn State as the program, but they've still got players. They've still got players who have run through there that are superstars. And if James Franklin can't do it with this crew, even though I'm not the biggest Drew Aller guy, then I think maybe the narrative and the identity of Franklin is that he's all sizzle and no steak, no matter how big the college football playoff is.
Yeah, and you look at guys that are now first time at their university at the head coaching position full time. Like if Sharon Moore doesn't get in, Michigan fans will be upset. Alabama, right? I don't think there's national championship expectations, but as much as I love Kalen DeBoer, you better get in from a 12-team format. But I'm fascinated because my answer would have been Barrett Sallee. It would have been James Franklin at Penn State. I'm curious, Notre Dame and LSU this year with Marcus Freeman and Brian Kelly, if they'll be in the 12-team format.
I think Notre Dame is, I wouldn't say a shoo-in, but
it's designed for them to get in.
It is. The whole thing is like Penn State's, it's designed for them to get in, but it's designed for Notre Dame to get in too. And they're getting Texas A&M in week 1 when Texas A&M is full of questions. So I think Notre Dame is in a good spot. If Riley Leonard is close to what he was when he was 100%, then I think they'll be fine. You know what they can do in the trenches. They're tough. They're physical. That's their identity. And the schedule sets up really, really, really well, especially since USC is a disaster right now. With LSU, I think people are sleeping on LSU for a couple reasons. One, making a run to the playoff is easier for them than I think virtually any other SEC school because the schedule is so easy. By SEC standards, LSU is right up there with the easiest schedule in the country. Yeah, they play 2 Power 5 teams in USC and UCLA, but I don't think people respect UCLA at all, and I personally don't respect USC either. And then I think defensively, all they got to do is be mediocre. They just can't be god-awful like they were last year. Just be mediocre, and they can. They got Blake Baker running that defense. He's a fantastic defensive coordinator, and they still have weapons. They still have running backs. They've still got Kyron Lacey to step in for Malik Neighbors. They've got a great offensive line. They've actually have 6 returning starters on the offensive line, and you can only play 5. Like that's how deep they are up front. So I think people are sleeping on LSU a little bit, and I think it's set up for them in Brian Kelly to make a run because we know Brian Kelly is going to be competitive in anything that he does. He's always got that team competitive, no matter whether it's LSU or Notre Dame when he was there, except in 2016. So I think people are sleeping on LSU for sure.
Yeah, and year 3s are usually very kind to Brian Kelly. Last thing I'll ask you, when we just look at this 12-team format, So 5 conference champs get in, and then there's 7 spots up for grab. We both talked about it. Notre Dame probably in most years will get in. For those other 6 spots, in most years, it's probably going to be, 3 more Big Ten schools, 3 more SEC schools? Like, do you see a second ACC or a second Big 12 team getting in potentially this year?
Yeah, I think you can see 2 of both actually.
Wow.
With Utah and Oklahoma State in the Big 12. The Big 12 is going to be fascinating. I mean, there's like 6 or 7 teams that can win on any given day. So I think Oklahoma State and Utah probably do get in. And then Clemson, Florida State. If you're a Miami guy, Miami could get in. Do not sleep on Virginia Tech at all. The schedule is super easy, and they've got a great quarterback in Kyron Drones and a ton of returning talent offensively. Because if you're a 10-2 ACC team or a 10-2 Big 12 team, you're still probably getting in over the 4th best SEC or Big 10 team. I think that's, it's a narrative that exists. I get it. But you look back historically, I think only once in the last 5 years, 4 SEC teams would have actually gotten in based on the final college football playoff rankings. And a lot of that too, Zach, depends on the group of 5. Yes, they get 1 in, but what if there are 2 undefeated group of 5 teams? One of them has to have an at-large bid, and that team might still be pretty good, depending on who it is or who they played or whatever. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that you get 4 each from the SEC and the Big Ten. Actually, I'd be surprised most years, as long as this format stays the same, which ask me in a couple of years, it might that only might have a 2-year shelf life, right? That has a 2-year shelf life, but in this format, I would say actually you get more times than not you don't get 4 from the 2 big conferences.
I just I see on Twitter, and then we'll let you run. It says on your Twitter, could Colorado fire Deion Sanders early in the 2024 season? What's the background on this?
So that story from Athlon that was published, I guess it was Friday, about how the culture of there's fighting, there's problems, there's just all kinds of crap that ongoing inside the locker room. That's the kind of stuff that can get you fired. I don't think on the field it has really anything to do with Deion. They're going to be better than last year. They still might be 4-8, but they can be better than last year. But if the culture is anywhere close to what that Athlon story suggested from, I guess, as last Friday, it was August 2nd, then that's the kind of thing that can make decisions very easy for athletic directors and administrators. So that was the genesis of that. And part of that is also because Deion was on an odds list of coaches who would be the first to be fired in college football this year. I think he was 50-1. So I was sitting there, I was like, okay, 50-1, there's some value there if the culture is anywhere close to as bad as that story sort of claims and reflects.